You may think it isn't great to be Mike Norvell right now. I actually believe that it is. I legitimately think that. Here's why. Mike Norvell got a large extension after an undefeated season, which they missed the playoffs, all the controversy and whatnot in 2023. Then they got blown out by Georgia in the bowl game, and then last year's a complete and utter disaster. Mike Norvell is not coaching with a ton of pressure this year. There is no hot seat discussion. The extension is still way too early in its tenure for what happens on the field this year to play a significant role in, well, is he on the hot seat going into the next season? No, his contract is signed through 2031, so he just has to get this right. I'm not saying that's fun or that this past season was fun. No, it was a disaster. It was a mess. I don't expect Florida State to be any better this year, but the good news for Mike Norvell, they don't need to, I'm going to rephrase that just ever so slightly. One or two words can make the difference. I don't expect Florida State to be significantly better than they were this past season. I do think the bar is kind of the floor. They almost didn't have a Power 4 win this past season. They scraped by Cal at home, or else they would have been 1-11 with a win over Charleston Southern and literally nobody else. I believe they can be better than that. Gus Malzahn is inserted as offensive coordinator. They bring in Thomas Castellanos to be the quarterback from Boston College after it didn't quite work out with Bill O'Brien there. I can see them being better, but I don't think they're going to be great. I don't think this is a quick fix. But the good news for Mike Norvell is it doesn't need to be. He doesn't come into this season, my view, with massive expectations or massive pressure. Last season just dumped him off the face of the earth as a football program. And that's happened to Florida State before, but you can build it back up. They've brought in consecutive top 20 high school recruiting classes, back-to-back top 10 transfer portal classes. Now, last year, that didn't work out very well. And so the interesting thing with Florida State is they fly under the radar as a portal-heavy team. When you think portal-heavy, where does your mind go? Colorado first, right? Last 2 years, 95 players have gone to Colorado in the transfer portal. 95 in Deion Sanders' first 2 seasons. That's a lot. That's primarily where the Buffs have built their roster. You think about Indiana or USC and Lincoln Riley's first year. Lots of options, but you don't think about Florida State necessarily. But after the transfer portal class that they brought in last year, which was top 10, not top 5, but top 10, pretty good. That failed spectacularly in every sense of the term. They went right back to the well. Another top 10 transfer portal class this year, number 7, and they're bringing in 16 guys. Most notably among them is Castellanos. They also brought in Squirrel White, transfer from Tennessee at wide receiver. That's a pretty notable target. If those two develop chemistry, that can be pretty explosive. That can be dynamic. And here's the good news for Florida State before I get to their schedule. The bar for offensive output and quarterback play is unthinkably low. They played 3 quarterbacks a season ago. DJ Uyunglele, that didn't go well. Brock Glenn, Luke Kromenhoek. Kromenhoek's now at Mississippi State. And they bring in Castellanos to start. DJ Hughes done. Do you know how many touchdowns those guys threw for combined a season ago? 3 quarterbacks. They threw for 11 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. It can't get any worse. It literally cannot get worse. And yeah, Castellanos got benched at Boston College last year. I don't know if he and the offense that Gus Malzahn or that Bill O'Brien wanted to run, I don't know if that was a perfect fit. It was just kind of, that whole situation got thrown together at the last moment. Bill O'Brien had accepted a job to be the OC at Ohio State and then decided, I can be closer to home and be a head coach again. Yep, I'm going to go do that. And Castellanos was already there after Coach Hafley left to be the defense coordinator for the Packers, right? That whole thing just cycled and spiraled, and that was the situation you wound up with. And halfway through the season, they decided, this isn't the guy. So now he goes back to a coach he does have familiarity with in Gus Malzahn, who is much more accustomed to working with mobile quarterbacks and incorporating that into his offensive system and game plan. So I think Castellanos can be significantly better. I don't think he's top 3 or 4 in the ACC, but he can be significantly better than what Florida State had at quarterback last year. So that's a good starting point. Now, the rest of the roster, of course, has to be able to produce. They also had 22 outgoing transfers this past year. And It doesn't matter how well you recruit. If you lose all the guys to the transfer portal eventually, they haven't lost everyone. And Florida State can still build this up. They're still in the state of Florida. They're still a premier brand in the ACC. The long-term outlook is not disastrous, but in the short term, frankly, I'm just looking for Florida State to win 4 or 5 games. If they do that this year with the schedule they have, I'd consider that a success. Because the schedule they have is pretty brutal, which again, is not a bad thing. You know, obviously as a fan base, you want to root for a team that can go win a national championship, but that's stressful. I mean, you got to endure tight games and gut-wrenching moments and heart-stopping calls from the officials that drive you crazy and you want to rip your hair out or punch a hole in the wall. And I don't think Florida State's going to have any of that. They're just looking for progress. Can you just be better? Take a step forward? Remind us that you are indeed a capable football coach? We have not seen a year-to-year drop-off like Florida State underwent from 2023 to 2024. They are literally the worst preseason top 10 football team in the history of college football. There has not been a worse one. You go find me the one that was worse. In the modern era, at least in my lifetime, they're the worst one. So they open with Alabama. All right, you're going to take an L on your home field. At least I think. You know, making predictions about Florida State brings up memories of last year when everybody and their mother was, oh, they'll beat Georgia Tech. Yep, this will go that way. I think Alabama goes into Bobby Bowden Field at Doak Campbell Stadium and winds up winning that football game. Call me crazy. East Texas A&M, Kent State to round out the non-conference. Should have a couple of wins early. Should. You better. Last year they had Memphis as a non-conference G5 opponent, and they lost that game. I thought they would bounce back. Nope, they didn't. Brian Smith of Locked On Seminoles said, no, they're losing this game. I'm telling you. And I said, they'll figure it out. No, they did not figure it out. But the ACC schedule is also brutally difficult. They open at Virginia. That's a tougher game than most people realize. They have to play Miami. They have to play at Clemson. They've got to play Virginia Tech. And they close going to NC State in league play before the annual rivalry game with Florida. They've got 2 SEC teams on the schedule, and they have to go at the reigning champs, and they have to play a team that's going to be in the top of the conference again in Miami. So I don't love the schedule for Florida State's chances this year, but I think this is a real opportunistic moment for Mike Norvell and the Seminoles, because you shouldn't look at this year as we got to get back to 8-9 wins. You're not going to do that in 1 year. Rome was not built in a day, but it burned in one, and Florida State burned down last year. So you got to work, lay the foundation, play young guys, establish a culture again, figure out what you want to be, how you get back to winning football, and just take a step forward. That's it. That's all you need to do. It doesn't have to be an Indiana level turnaround where it's, hey, they were a 3-9 team, and now, granted, they brought in a new head coach, but they went from 3 wins to 11 wins, and look at that. Or, hey, look at what Colorado was able to do. Frankly, I don't even think that's a bad example. I think that's a pretty good one. Colorado was 1-11. Coach Prime came in, brought in a bunch of transfers. They won 4 games his first year. That's all you're looking for. Last year they won 9. Florida State should view themselves as a program that is just 2 seasons away, including this upcoming one in 2025, from being a 9 to 10 win team once again.